Ready?
Yeah.
Set.
Go.
So, hi, welcome to the Unfiltered Guide to Parenting podcast. I'm Rachael Somerman, your host, and this is my lovely, wonderful friend, Holly.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
I'm pumped to talk about one of my favorite topics,
Yeah.
eating and feeding. And to give you like a little background,
Yes.
I am a medical speech pathologist. I got into specializing specifically in feeding and eating and swallowing because I was one of those kids that needed a feeding specialist growing up, and it was a pretty traumatic, horrific experience. So, I wanted to go to school to make it a more enjoyable, pleasurable, fun experience for kids and for parents, and to try to kind of, spread that mindset and mentality when I do trainings. So people realize,
Success.
yeah,
Yes. You've done it.
I've done it and it's fun. And so, that's what I specialize in. I started my first 10 years at Children's Hospital of Colorado, where I had the pleasure of working with gastroenterologists, allergists, neurologists, pediatric, developmental pediatricians. And I feel like I got the creme de la creme of training. So I feel lucky. And then I got to meet different people like you and all these other kind of clinics across the country.
And then you got to train us. And then here we are. That's the best part.
And here we are.
Yeah. Holly has been a wonderful mentor for me for the past, I guess, 2 years now, is it? I feel like it's been a while.
I mean, yeah, but you graduated, but
yeah. I need a refresher, but no, Holly's been great, teaching me a lot of different things and strategies and different stuff to implement in my practice. So it's been super fun. Just specializing in feeding is wild and emotional and hard and problem solving and emotional and tough. But that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit is feeding and eating for parents at home, whether you have a kiddo with a feeding disorder or just a neurotypical kid, and you're like, how do I get food in them? And how much food do I give them? And what way should I give it to them? Especially for the younger, 0 to 5-year-olds, maybe even littler than that, the little ones, So we're going to get in the nitty gritty of that because that's a tough conversation.
It is. And I feel like parents, in life in general these days, everyone gets so overwhelmed. There's so much stimulability. There's so much going on with our work and our stress. And I feel like when parents come to us and they're like, well, our kid isn't eating, or our kid doesn't eat this thing, or they're not chewing. And I think the number one thing I like to tell them is to remember that it's developmental. So just pause all of the things in life. You and I are on the same page. Take the tablets away, turn the TV off, maybe don't have music on in the background, and just enjoy your tiny human.
Yeah.
And that time at a mealtime.
Yeah. And we say developmental, it's such a common term to us, but I don't know that people really truly understand what that means, right? It's something that takes time to evolve. It takes time for kids to practice. It's something that, as much as learning to crawl and sit and walk and talk, it's the same thing. They have to learn it over time, and it's not going to look perfect right away.
No. And they also need someone who can model for them. I think that people don't realize, I mean, you know me, how I talk about this. So I'm blue in the face, but I'm it's developmental in the too, that yes, there's a range of normal, but also they need to see and have someone model to them what you want them to do, the expectation. So if you want them to eat the peas, you better be eating the peas with them. Or they're not going to do it. I feel like we have so many parents that pretend bites, and I'm no. Just wait and watch your child. And I have this 18-month-old right now.
Yeah.
Just eat the food and
eat it.
This dad who pretends he's nom nom, and then now the baby's nom nom, putting it by her and just feeding it to the dog. And I'm like, that's what you're doing. You're modeling, pretending, and feeding the dog. So she's gonna do the same thing.
Yeah. Don't they say that the equalizer of literacy and language development is just reading a book to your kid every day? Isn't that one of the biggest things? And parents are quick to do that. cannot understand why we're not quick to do the same thing with feeding.
I don't know, and, like, just, like, also preparing everybody else's meal, like, as you just throw some stuff on their tray, like, that's
Mhm.
not a meal, like, that's not a mealtime, like, pause,
Yeah.
sit down,
Yeah.
have the things prepared beforehand before you put the child in the high chair or at their, trip trap chair, whatever it is, and share a meal with them, like,
Yeah.
that's the basics, I mean, really, that we've unfortunately gotten so far away from, again, stress, society, we
Mhm.
can't put our phones down, there's so much going on, but, I mean, just pause, put that stuff away, and connect with your child.
Yeah. What
Ugh.
do you think is the biggest I mean, this is like speculation, so I'm just curious because I always wonder like this, like, what's the biggest reason you think that people don't eat with their kids?
I think it's just they're they've got so much going on, like, I
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of, like, this is my time to catch up on my texts, like, this is my time to check out entirely, like, they're doing an
fair.
activity, and maybe they're okay doing the activity, but they're certainly not getting that stimulation and modeling that they should be getting
Mhm.
if their parents are checked out. It's interesting, we just, interviewed, like, a psychologist just talking about the stresses of people that have full-time jobs and that have
Yeah.
kids, and, like, by the time they're done and they get home, they're spent, and so they don't have time, they don't have, like, energy that their
That
child
mental
deserves.
capacity is just gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't blame them, I'm tired
Sure.
too,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, again, there's no, like, blame game, but I think if we all could just take 30 minutes where you just put your phone away, turn the TV
Mhm.
off, take the tablet away,
Yeah.
talk about your day, like, "Oh, well, mommy had, like, a crazy day today,"
Yeah.
like, "I'm gonna take a bite of this right now because it tastes good," like, it's just conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that like I hear from a lot of families that just come to the barn and their kids are neurotypical and they're just hanging out, they're growing fine, their development is fine, but they're such picky eaters. It's so hard to get them to eat. And I'm like, well, okay, so sitting with them, putting your phone away, turning the TV off, making
Yeah.
food that might be a little bit more work to make is hard.
Yes.
Being upset and worried that they're not eating enough or they're not getting enough nutrition or they're fighting you to get in their high chair or you have to have the TV on is also hard. So,
So hard.
which hard do we want to do? Because they're both hard and sometimes parenting just fucking sucks. And food
Yeah.
and meal times, I feel like, is one of the biggest things. If we were to poll all the families that we see or just like families that we run into or our friends' kids, I feel like if we poll
Yeah.
people, they're like, what's one of your least favorite times with your kid? Mealtime.
Nope. Yeah,
I bet it's
for
mealtime
sure.
across the board because it's
I
hard.
mean, it is hard, and you think about too, like, let's say, yeah, you came from your 9 to 5 and you come home and you get all these ingredients and you cook a meal and your kid's like, "No, ew, that's gross. I'm not
Mhm.
eating it." You're like, "This feels really shitty."
Yeah.
Like, I
Yucky.
just
Yeah.
spent yeah, like 30 to 45 minutes preparing, like, this meal for you, and you're like, "I just want mac and cheese and chicken nuggets." Like, what the actual F, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
that's what I think, we are people who are conditioned. So, like, if we get that response 3 times in a row, you better damn well bet I'm gonna fucking make the mac and cheese
Yeah.
and just be like, "Eat."
Shut up
Like,
and eat it. It's fine. Everything's
yeah,
fine.
like,
Yeah.
I just want you to eat, but we've
So
gotta
then
kind of I don't
what's a good middle ground there
I
between
mean,
just giving mac and cheese or making the 5-course meal? Like, what's the middle ground?
great question. I mean, I'm a big, like, believer in serving things family style
Mhm.
and, like, letting kids kinda serve themselves even at 12 months old. Like, I'll be like, I'll help them, you know what I mean? Like, I'll model scooping stuff on my plate, kind of more dramatic, like, "Ooh, it's drop, drop, drop," so then they're
Mhm.
more inclined to, like, imitate it.
Yeah, I love
But
that.
if we do that family style, one at a time, what's cool about that is, like, we can start with a small amount of something that's heavily and, like, highly preferred, and then when they want more, be like, "Sure, but you can absolutely have more mac and cheese, but, like, next we're gonna learn about cucumber together." Like, I'm gonna put 1 cucumber on my plate because it's not my favorite. You can have 2 or 3 on your plate and letting them serve themselves
Mhm.
and just modeling interacting with it. You don't have to model eating it, but that's the exposure piece that your child's missing when we just offer the same preferred foods, which then turn into hyperfixation meals, which then means they want
Mhm.
the same food over and over again, and then they just eliminate it from their diet completely. So I
Yeah.
feel like the family style is the easiest way because, like, I'm tired. I'm someone that gets tired. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I work way too much, and I'll prep stuff on Sundays and
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, so what I'm gonna, pull out this week, every meal for exposure is gonna be between carrots and cucumbers. It's just easy. I don't have to cook it.
Mhm.
It's already prepped and diced. And it's like those little things that I feel like families kind of pull away from because they're so fearful of the rejection from their child of the
Fair.
food. And then they just stop
Yeah.
eating.
Yeah. Talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about the exposure piece you're talking about.
Oh yeah. So we talked about eating being developmental. And so if a child is not exposed to a certain food, to them, it can be scary, noxious, fearful, and they're less likely to interact with it. But we have more and more families who are preparing food for their child and food for themselves, and they eat when the child goes to bed or the
Mhm.
children go to bed. And they're not getting that exposure like they would by seeing mommy eat a salad or daddy eat broccoli on the side. And so I like to have one exposure food per meal that maybe is not a home run. They
Right.
might not even pick it up, but at least they see it. We're giving them that opportunity to put it on their plate, maybe themselves, or we offer that we can help and put it on their plate for them. And then we're just modeling, like kissing, licking, taking bites, whatever it might be, or dipping, I'm not sure about broccoli, so I'm going to dip it in a cheese sauce because I love cheese sauce. And then
Mhm.
just narrating as you're going with the food is so helpful for all kids.
Yeah. I love that.
Because if we just put broccoli in front of your plate, are you going to be inclined to just all of a sudden pick it up and eat it if you've never seen it? Probably not. I mean,
I've seen it a lot and I'm still not eating it, so I don't know.
give
Not
me
the
some buffalo.
information you need to hear about exposure, but
But still, it's the truth that we all have preferences too. You know what I
right.
mean? Like you can expose kids to foods over and over again, and they might still never love it. There's preference foods,
Yeah.
but we know evidence wise, the more we present things to a child and we model interacting with it and being honest, like this is not my favorite, but I am going to maybe take a few bites of it, they're more inclined to actually eat it. That's why it's so important between that 4 months and 2 years that we expose them
Yeah.
and offer all of these different types of foods that are out there. I mean, I never saw an avocado until I was in my 20s, and I was like, what is this?
It's
you know,
delicious.
like it's
We
creamy and delicious, but when I
yeah,
first saw it, I was like, ooh,
I know. It is green and
what do we do
slimy
with this?
and weird.
Yeah.
I know we have at the barn on starting on Thursday this week, we have a 4-week long toddler chef camp, and one of the
Yeah.
things they're making is avocado toast.
Which is great. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a sensory experience. That's
Yeah.
the other thing too. People
Yeah.
don't think about just letting a kid get messy at a mealtime is a part of the deal too. Just let them get messy. Yes, maybe bath time's gonna be after a meal, but it's great for them to
Mhm.
just explore that food. Like the avocado toast, it's gonna be in their hair, it's gonna be on their hands. But if they don't have that young, desensitization to it, where we slowly build up their
Tolerance. Mhm.
tolerance with it, then they're less likely to be comfortable with it when they're 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially doing that early and younger on when you're spoon feeding, like letting their face be messy, letting them get their hands in it, because kids naturally get picky 16, 18 months or
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
until like 3 when they get maybe a little bit more adventurous, and that's different for every kid, but there's a natural phase of I like my same foods, I'm going to be picky, and you either as a parent kind of lean into it and you're like, "Fine, be picky. I'll give you what you
Right.
need to eat because I just need you to eat." Or
Mhm.
parents are like, "Okay, you can be picky, but like you're still gonna have a variety of foods on your plate, and this is what I'm offering you." Which
Right.
both are hard, but like
You're
which
so
one's harder? You know? Like which one sets you up for the longer term? I think the
right.
short term pain is not gonna be there for forever on one of
Right.
those options, right? One of those options,
Yeah.
we're gonna be okay eventually. One of those options, we're going down a rocky path. Because
Yeah.
what's the
Absolutely.
statistic right now? Isn't it like 1 in 4 kids has some sort of pediatric feeding disorder?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, and
It's a fucking lot.
it's kind of just
25%.
it's just a lot.
It's a
But
lot.
again, you kind of go back to the stress of society and parenting, and I mean, there's just a lot going on in life right now. And so
Mhm.
and things are so expensive. So I'll have so many families would be like, well, I can't afford to buy, a different vegetable to offer every week. I'm not asking you to do that. Like,
Yeah.
see what's on sale, like maybe raspberries are on sale this week for a fruit and like that's what you offer maybe 3 or 4 times over the week and you model with that food and then the
Yeah.
next week's whatever is on sale because it is expensive, especially when
Sure.
a kid refuses and it goes,
Yeah.
it's wasted.
Also, cans or frozen stuff is fine.
Totally
Yeah.
fine.
Cans are
Yeah.
totally fine, especially for your little ones that need the, like, softer stuff too, like, that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's not overcomplicate it, I think too, is
Right.
acceptable to just be like, "I'm opening a can of green beans, and you're going to have 3 green beans on your plate for the entire week, and that's my exposure." Great. Good for you, that's amazing. Like, that is
Amazing.
absolutely perfect, and doesn't need to
Yep.
be anything more than that, you know?
No.
Be
Totally,
be
and I think that's what people don't understand. They follow these influencers and they're like, "Oh my goodness, they just, like, prepared this gourmet meal 3 to 5 times a day," and they're, like, showcasing this. Well, like, actually, the truth is, like, on one Sunday, they changed outfits 8 times and, like, had a ton of different foods that they prepped, like,
Yeah,
have realistic expectations for yourself, like, I know I'm a little lazy when it comes to the kitchen, like, it's gonna be a crock pot meal like, for 2 or 3 meals, it's gonna be, like, cut up fresh fruits and vegetables that I prepare one day and
mhm,
fully slowly, like, pull out of the fridge, so, like, do whatever's reasonable for you and your family, but also
yeah,
just start eating with your kids.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just teach
Turn
your
off the
children.
screens, turn off the
Yeah.
distractions, I mean, we've talked about this a million times. We've seen it all. Kids going down a slide and someone scooping food in their face. We're eating in the bathtub. We're running in circles around the house and they run by and we're like, eat a bite, run by, eat a bite. Like, I think it's just this
Yeah.
innate feeling, especially for moms. Dads feel it too, but moms have a baby, feed your baby. Like, that is the goal. That is how we're supposed to do it. And then where we're not able to feed them, or they're not feeding well, or they're not eating what we think they should be eating, it's just meltdown central, and it adds even more stress when one of the biggest
Mhm.
ways to get rid of that stress, like we've said 9 times so far, is just sit with them at the table. Sit at the table, pull
Right,
their
and
high chair up to the table, take the tray off if you want to, scoot them right up to the table, um,
yeah.
and put the food there and you guys eat together, and you'd be
Right.
shocked, I think, how quickly you make changes like that. Just that one
Absolutely.
change. Yeah.
Just that one change, and it's like around that will scaffold all these other things that are just gonna help you, like, because you'll start having, like, a dedicated mealtime routine. Maybe you both wash your hands together, or all 5 of
Mhm.
you, however many there are in the sink, and then, Jimmy always pulls up the plates, and Becca always has, the spoons, like, whatever that might be, but have a consistent mealtime routine
Yeah.
with the expectation that maybe we just do explore one food at a time or something, and that's gonna hold their attention. They're not gonna need a tablet because there's a routine that
Mhm.
is the distraction slash actually what's helping them focus and attend. I
Yeah.
think parents don't realize that we are the distraction. Like, so many people will be like, "Hey, can you just move into my house? My kid eats for you." I'm like, "They eat for me because I'm 1,000% engaged with them. I have nothing else going on."
Right.
I also am, like, weird, which is great, but, like, make yourself be that
Goofy.
distraction.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, mommy's crunching this. It's so loud. Crunch, 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 crunch." And they're gonna be
Yeah.
like, "This is great. Like, Miss
Yeah.
Rachel's at the table with us." But you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you can
It's just
be that
playful.
piece.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Just playful. Yeah,
Yeah, everything our kids do is play. I mean, they really should be learning through play for a long
yeah.
time, a lot longer than we let them
I
play,
know.
than we let them before we make them start sitting down in tables, but that's a whole 'nother story. But
Well, and I also love your point too, like, you're talking about your toddler, like, cooking
mhm.
class. So, like, just maybe that's part of the routine for, like, 2 meals a week where they just help prep something.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be
Maybe do that.
exorbitantly, like, crazy, right? So, we're doing a class with it'll be 8 kids and a teacher, and it's mommy and me, so the kids are with them, and we're gonna prep and, like, set up. Like, the avocado's already cut. They're gonna squeeze the
Yep,
avocado out of the shell into their bowl. They're gonna dump the already cut up tomatoes and stuff into it, and then squeeze their
yep,
already little thing of lime juice into it, and then they're gonna get to smash it together. So, it doesn't need to
yeah,
be even just, like, if you're making a smoothie, like, let them put the pieces of bananas in the smoothie or in the blender,
absolutely.
or
Yeah,
let them, like, s throw the dry ingredients in with the wet ingredients if you're making, like, pancakes or something and let them stir it. Like, it doesn't need to be over the top, again, like some of these, like, influencers are. It needs to be realistic, but it needs to
Right.
be involved. And I think that that's the big word is just like be involved in everything with them and you'll see the change.
Right.
And starting that
1,000%.
early, like early, early, early,
Yes.
early. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there's just so many important things. I mean, like when I have parents that come in and they're like, "Oh my goodness, like maybe they're not ready at 5 months yet because, to start purees because they don't have the head and neck control, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm like, just have them in the kitchen with you when you're making your own food and like you're gonna see them start watching everything you're doing with that food. And it's
Yeah.
like once your baby starts eating some solids and purees, you'll see them just like open their mouth and like follow whatever you're
Mhm.
eating. So that's like the time, but they're already being exposed before they maybe were ready to eat orally. So
Right.
it all matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too that one thing I've seen a lot, and you've probably seen some of this too, is that we have unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
for how much kids should be
Oh
eating,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that we're quick to be like, it's been 12 hours, they've been asleep all night, they need to eat so much. And it's like, well, we
No,
really don't. Like, we have this
no.
intrinsic in our brains, unless there's something else going on. But for
Right.
the vast majority of people, we have this intrinsic thing in our body that says, I'm full. I've had enough. I've eaten enough. My jaw is tired. My stomach is full. I'm done eating. And for some reason, parents just like lose that concept and are like, but you must keep eating. And we got to get rid of that.
No,
We got to get rid of that.
we really do. One of my favorite dietitians on planet Earth, like she's always just like, just think about like the size of their fist. Okay. It's little. I mean, I have small hands in general, but like we all kind of eat too much. You know what I mean? So it should be, roughly like 2 to 4 little fistfuls
Mhm.
of 2 to 4 different foods. It's
Right.
not that much. And when they're itty, itty bitty, their hands are so pudgy and little, but they're still little. It's not that much food. And so like we have to they're so squishy with like the little
I know.
dimples, the
Yeah.
knuckle dimple. I like can't. Um, I just feel like someone needs to do like an artist thing of just hand dimples and like arm rolls.
I
Like
know.
a
I have a
side.
couple that are
I
just
get
like
side.
Michelin rolls, like every 2 inches, and they're so cute.
So cute. So
Yeah.
cute. But kind of, like think about that. Like
Hmm.
they don't need to eat that much. And then also like cut them off at a certain point too. Like you should not be having meals more than 30 minutes. Like my
Yeah.
goodness, you're just gonna be feeding your kid all day,
Yeah.
like be realistic with yourself.
Yeah. Well, because kids are still eating pretty frequently, like especially like infants and toddlers, they're eating every couple hours.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So you
Which
don't want
is
them to have
also
an hour
why
long meal.
why their belly's not emptying and then filling back up because they're just eating so often, which is fine. They need that for their energy levels, but
Mhm.
it's little. It's little, little, little
It is.
portions.
It is little portions. And it's more important to have the quality, and I feel like, and the exposure than to push the
Mhm.
volume.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if
Mm.
you feel like you're like, I have to turn on the TV or I have to give them toys or I have to distract them to get to the volume. They're not eating and being mindful of their eating, and they're not eating to fulfill, I'm hungry, I'm eating for energy, for sustainability, to get rid of my hunger. They're eating because they're trying to be compliant, which we
Right.
know research wise, long term, kind of leads into some disordered eating
Right. Exactly.
that,
Exactly. It's not teaching them to listen like in tunely to like what their appetite, satiation, any of those cues. So we
yeah.
don't want to push them. And we don't want them to be checked out when they're eating because then they don't realize like I am full or I've had
Mhm.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest takeaways from the developmental piece of eating and working with your kiddos that in that young age is definitely sitting with them and being with them and eating with them, but then also exposure and just realizing that every meal is not going to be great. Like there's going to be
No.
some meals where they eat 3 bites of goldfish and none of their fruit and drink none of their milk and drink none of their water, and they're going to be like, "I'm done." Okay,
Right. And that's
fine.
fine. You try again at the next meal or snack time. It's
Right.
not a big deal.
Yeah.
And the other big takeaway is you look at the intake that they have over a week,
Yeah.
not a day. Like that's something that like it took me so hard to it was so hard for me to remember and like internalize that when I was a
Mhm.
new clinician. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, they're here for an intensive and like this child, whatever. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And they're like, you look over the week. It's the
Yeah,
calorie intake over the week. And I'm like, oh, whew, I can breathe. Like, because all of us do different at different times of day,
sure.
depending
Yeah.
on what we did, maybe the day before or that morning.
How well did we sleep last night? Have we taken a poop today? Have we taken 2 poops today? Like,
Yeah.
those things are all part of it and are gonna impact. I mean, if you really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of it, I'm sure there's some parents out there that are charting every bottle they take in, every poop they have, every hour they sleep when they're the first couple months or years old, right? So if you look at that, I bet you're gonna see intake is going like this, when their poop is going like this, and when their poop is
Yes.
going like this, their intake's going like this. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of this, are we ebb and flow, and it's not going to be the exact same every day. So that
Mhm.
week over a week process makes sense. Like, that's great. It's a
Yeah,
good tip
absolutely.
too. Yeah. What do
Like
you
crash
think?
course.
Yes, I know. What else can we cram into 25 minutes on a podcast?
Yeah.
I know. What do you think is the most important um for our families that maybe are having trouble with their kids eating? Like, what's the most important ding ding, you need assistance, you need help, you need somebody to chime in here, you need some intervention? Side
I
note of
think
this developmental conversation.
I think, like, if you're having significant, like, battles, like, if you're having mealtime battles and you're not able to get over that without some intervention, I mean, it's kind of wild when you think about sometimes you just introduce this one stranger and things get better. They just for some reason, sometimes kids need to hear it from somebody else. I don't know the psychology behind that, you know what I mean? But that could
Yeah.
be it. Or if your child's like truly having trouble gaining weight, or you know what I mean, they're kind of circling with just one or two foods and
Yeah.
you're not really being successful on your own. We're here to help. Like we love to help. And it doesn't mean you need 12 sessions. Sometimes you just need an evaluation with some ideas and somebody else to bounce ideas off.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because kids kind of they get into their own routine, and if their routine is to refuse, 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 I'm going to throw my head back. Are you looking at me like I'm throwing a tantrum before you like put me in my high chair? Like
Mhm.
we need to make a whole new routine. Like maybe a meal time's in a different room, maybe we have a different chair, maybe we have like a theme song we sing.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
if it's feeling like you're not winning, if the suggestions we're giving you feel like too
Mhm.
much, just make an appointment for, and we can
Yeah.
help problem solve that and individualize something specific for your family and your needs.
Yeah, a lot of this conversation is very broad and very much just like, here are some good tips and things you should be doing parenting wise on a regular basis that will help support your kid in their long-term feeding development. However, we know that 1 in 4 kids, 25%, that's a lot. Like, for
A lot.
reference, I think the last time I looked, it's been a while since I looked, but for reference, like ASD diagnosis, autism is like 1 in 74,
Yeah.
54, something like that,
I don't
right?
know. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
somewhere around there. It's not 1 in 4. It's not
Right.
25%. And how prevalent is
No.
autism? Everybody knows somebody that has been diagnosed with that,
Yeah.
right? So, like, think again about the numbers there. 1 in 4 kids, 25% of the kids in the world right now have some sort of pediatric feeding disorder. That is a lot. And some of
A
it can
lot.
come from, not that it's all from parenting and not that it's all from, there's a lot of medical issues that go into this too. But
Right.
if you can kind of heat off some of that, knowing that it's a possibility, making some of these changes and intervening early, because like Holly said, I've just in the last 2 months, I've seen 4 families in the last 2 months for 2 visits each. The end.
Mhm.
And they're doing great. It was
Yeah.
like you said, it was the word. We've built some patterns, we've built some routines around. I freak out getting in my high chair, you put food on my tray, I chuck it across the room, you just go,
Yeah.
"Fine, fuck it, eat whatever you wanna eat,"
Yeah.
and then I give you whatever you wanna have, and it's just making little tweaks, and we're seeing huge progress, right? So,
Yeah.
intervening doesn't have to be this huge, big ordeal, it can just be some sort of consultative approach, somebody that, like us at the barn, we do developmental consultations. There's definitely feeding specialists all over the place that you can try to get into,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's just somebody, the stranger, coming in to
Yeah.
take a look at that 10,000-foot view, and we're not in it every day, to try to see
Right.
what other little things you can change.
Absolutely. And I think like the biggest takeaway is like there are people that specialize in it. There
Yes.
are people that specialize in developmental. development in general. And, sometimes you just need someone to bounce ideas off of. And we're
Mhm.
here and we know how hard it is. I mean, it's my entire caseload and I'm
Yeah.
booked out months. Like,
Mhm.
we know how hard it is.
Yes.
And we just want to help. And we're weirdos and research and read everything and watch all the things. So you don't have to.
Nerds. We
Yeah.
do nerd out on feeding, the 2 of us for sure.
Yeah, but it's fine. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
Like, let's take all the strategies that are out there. Your child responds in this way, so these things aren't going to work, but I know these things will be super helpful, and we'll try them and tweak them until you're successful.
Yeah. And if you have a new little babes and they're
Yeah,
6, 8, 10 months old, whatever it is, and you're deciding you want to start trying some foods, keep the pressure low, sit with
yeah,
them and play with them, let them get messy, like really set them up for success for the long term. And you're going to be so glad that you did because you're going to have the kid that eats a lot of different things happily
right.
in their chair and isn't running around in circles and fighting you over bites of food. Just take it slow. And remember, it's developmental and they have to develop slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
The babies. Thanks for
babies
coming today.
for having
It's
me
so good to see you all the way from Maine, far, far away.
so far away.
I know. But thank you for coming. I hope this information was helpful for everybody. Hang out and subscribe and we'll have more episodes coming on soon.
Perfect. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. I hope to see you back soon. Subscribe below.